All right, so ever get that feeling, like you're pushing this boulder up a hill, making some serious progress towards your goal, and then boom, you're sliding back down.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Today, we're going deep on that sneaky foe of progress, regression, and get this, we've got some seriously insightful source material to help us understand how it happens. But more importantly, how to break free. Like, for good.
You know what's fascinating? Regression, it often isn't this huge, dramatic setback.
Oh, tell me about it.
It's more like, a slow leak in a tire. You know what I mean? You're cruising along, everything seems fine, and then boom, you're flat.
Ugh, the worst.
The sources we dug into highlight how our brains are actually wired for efficiency. So those old habits, they're like superhighways.
Like those neural pathways we always hear about.
Exactly. Our brains, they just love to use those well-worn paths. But building new habits, well, it's a whole different story. It's like forging a new trail. Through the wilderness, it takes constant work.
Oh, I can definitely relate to that. One of the sources actually talked about how they were totally rocking their daily meditation practice, like crushing it every day. Then work got crazy, they missed a few sessions, and bam, restarting felt like climbing Mount Everest.
Yeah, totally.
It's like that path in their brain got totally overgrown with weeds, and they couldn't even find it anymore.
I've been there.
It really hit home for me because I think we've all been there at some point, right? Like it's not a personal failing, it's just how our brains work. So how do we even start to build defenses against this whole regression thing?
Well, the sources offer this really cool framework. They call it the 3 pillars to building a fortress of consistency.
Okay, I am loving this fortress analogy. Pillar number 1, hit me.
All right, pillar 1 is all about heightened awareness. Think of it like your early warning system. The key takeaway here is to catch those slips early, when they're still small and easy to correct. Like way easier.
Oh, makes sense. One of the sources had this super practical tip that they called the one-step back rule. Basically, never let yourself slip back 2 steps.
I like that.
So you missed one workout. Fine. But just make absolutely sure you don't miss the next one. Address any misstep right away before it snowballs into a bigger problem.
So simple, but so smart.
Right. What else can we do to kind of boost our awareness?
Regular self-reflection can be surprisingly powerful, even just scheduling a few minutes each day to check in with yourself.
To kind of take stock, right?
Exactly. Like, ask yourself, are my actions actually lining up with my goals? Am I making any small compromises that could turn into bigger slips later on?
That's a great point. It's all about being honest with ourselves and spotting those warning signs before they become full-blown regressions. I'm a big fan of journaling for this. I don't know about you, but it really helps me stay accountable.
I can see that.
And speaking of accountability, the sources also really emphasize the power of having an accountability partner.
Oh, for sure.
Someone to share your goals with and who will gently nudge you back on track if you start to slip. Have you found that helpful in your own life?
Absolutely. Having that external perspective could be so valuable. It's like having an extra set of eyes to help you stay focused. Someone who can see those things you might be missing.
Totally. Okay, so we've got heightened awareness as our first pillar of defense. Solid foundation. What about pillar number 2? What's that all about?
Okay, so pillar number 2 is all about environmental design. Think of it like strategically hacking your surroundings to make good habits easier and bad habits harder.
Oh, I like this. Like setting yourself up for success.
Exactly. And one of the things that really jumped out at me from the sources was the power of visual reminders.
Yes. It's like that saying, out of sight, out of mind, right? Like if you're trying to eat healthier, just don't even keep junk food in the house.
Aha, exactly. You're literally designing your environment for success. And visual cues work too, like putting your gym bag by the door or a sticky note with your deadline on your computer, whatever it takes to keep those goals front and center.
Love it. Another tip that the sources highlighted was to minimize friction for the actions you want to take.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
So like prepping your workout clothes the night before or having those healthy snacks pre-portioned and ready to grab. It's all about removing those barriers and making the positive choice the easiest choice.
Precisely. You're basically engineering your environment to support your goals. And then on the flip side, you want to maximize friction for those unwanted actions, right? Unsubscribe from those tempting email lists, mute those social media notifications, remove those triggers that can pull you back into those old patterns.
It's like you're playing this game against your own brain, but in a good way.
Yeah.
Setting yourself up for success instead of constantly battling temptation. Are there any other aspects of this environmental design thing we should be thinking about?
Well, one of the sources really emphasized the social aspect of all this, the idea that you should surround yourself with people who support your goals and embody the behaviors you're striving for.
Oh, absolutely. Your social circle can have a huge impact. If you're constantly around people who are indulging in the habits you're trying to break, it's going to be an uphill battle, like way harder to stay on track. We really have to be mindful of that. Okay, so far we've got heightened awareness and environmental design, 2 pretty awesome pillars for fortifying ourselves against regression, right?
For sure.
What's the third pillar all about?
Okay, the third pillar is all about habit formation. Remember those neural superhighways we were talking about?
Oh, yeah, those well-worn paths in our brains.
Exactly. So this is about building new ones, making those positive actions so ingrained, so automatic, they become our brain's default setting.
Okay, I am totally here for this. Tell me more about the strategies behind this habit formation thing.
Well, one of the most effective strategies is this idea of start small, stack big.
Interesting.
The idea is instead of trying to overhaul your entire life at once, making these massive changes all at once, you begin with small, manageable tweaks to your routine and then gradually build on those wins.
I love this. I totally used this approach when I was trying to build a consistent workout habit. Instead of aiming for like an hour at the gym every single day, which felt so daunting, I just started with 10 minutes after my morning coffee.
Smart.
It was so much easier to stick to, and over time I was able to gradually increase the duration and the intensity.
That's a perfect example. Small changes, consistently applied, can lead to some seriously remarkable results over time. And another powerful rule for habit formation that we can't overlook is the never miss twice rule.
Never miss twice. Okay, that sounds super intriguing. Break it down for us.
So this rule acknowledges that, we're human, right? Life happens. We're bound to miss a workout, indulge in a treat now and then. It happens.
It definitely happens.
But the key is to never let it happen 2 days in a row. Get back on track immediately after any slip-up, and you'll prevent those small slips from becoming full-blown regressions.
It's like hitting that reset button.
Exactly.
Preventing those negative spirals before they gain momentum. This really makes me think about how important it is to be kind to ourselves throughout this whole process. Like, it's not about beating ourselves up when we mess up.
You're so right. Self-compassion is absolutely essential. We tend to be our own harshest critics. But when we approach this journey with understanding and grace, it becomes so much more sustainable, don't you think?
100%. One thing that really resonated with me from the sources was the idea of making the process enjoyable. Because, let's be real, if you dread your new habit, it's going to be that much harder to stick with it, right?
Oh, yeah, totally.
So finding ways to make it fun, or at least tolerable, is crucial.
Absolutely. Sustainability is key, right? So celebrate those small wins, track your progress to see how far you've come, and just experiment until you find what truly works for you. Make it a journey you can enjoy, not a battle you have to fight.
Love that. Okay, so we've got our 3 pillars for building a regression-proof fortress: heightened awareness, environmental design, and habit formation. But we've also got to be realistic, right?
Of course.
Life throws curveballs, and sometimes even our best efforts get derailed. So what are some of the most common challenges that can kind of trip us up on this journey?
Well, the sources addressed a bunch of these common challenges head-on. And one of the most frequent complaints, I'm too busy.
Oh, tell me about it. I think we're all guilty of that one from time to time.
Right. But the sources suggest that, more often than not, it's not actually a lack of time, but a symptom of poor prioritization.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about really taking control of our schedules and making sure our actions are truly aligned with our priorities.
Exactly. Implement those time-blocking techniques, delegate tasks when possible, and learn to say no to commitments that don't truly serve your goals.
Great advice. So, besides feeling totally overwhelmed, what other challenges do the sources highlight?
Another big one is burnout. Our culture often glorifies busyness and hustle, but pushing ourselves too hard for too long inevitably leads to exhaustion, and you guessed it, regression.
It's like that saying, you can't pour from an empty cup.
Precisely. So the key here is to prioritize rest and recovery. Engage in activities that recharge you, and don't hesitate to ask for help when you need it.
Self-care isn't selfish, it's essential. Okay, what's the last challenge on the list?
The final challenge the sources address is that dreaded loss of motivation. That initial excitement for a new goal, it can fade over time, especially when we hit setbacks or plateaus.
Yeah, it's so easy to get discouraged when progress isn't linear. So how do we combat that dip in motivation and stay the course?
The sources offer several strategies, but one that really resonated with me is reconnecting with your why. That deeper reason behind your aspirations. Why is this goal important to you? What are the benefits you'll experience by achieving it?
I love that, tapping back into that emotional connection to your goal. And it's interesting, the sources highlight that these principles of overcoming regression, they don't just for personal growth. They apply to professional success as well.
You're absolutely right. Think about project management, where preventing scope creep and maintaining quality control requires strategies to, avoid regression. Or in team leadership, where fostering a culture of accountability and upholding protocols are are crucial for effectiveness.
It's all connected. The sources even offer some specific workplace examples, like imagine a team implementing a new process. Everyone's super excited at first, then slowly people start slipping back into those old ways of doing things.
Yeah, a classic example of that comfort zone effect we talked about earlier. Our brains, they crave those familiar paths, even if they're not the best ones.
So how can companies make sure these new systems actually stick, that people don't just slide back into old habits?
Well, the sources suggest that leadership and communication are absolutely key. It's so important for leaders to consistently reinforce the why behind the change, to articulate the benefits, and to address any concerns directly. And just as importantly, they need to create an environment where people feel comfortable experimenting, making mistakes, and learning as they go.
I love that. It's about fostering a culture of continuous improvement, where setbacks are seen as opportunities for growth, not failures.
Exactly.
And this ties back into habit formation as well, right? It's not enough to just introduce a new system. You have to support people in building those new habits. That might involve providing training, offering ongoing support, maybe even a buddy system to help people stay on track.
Right, it's a multifaceted approach, for sure.
So it's really this multifaceted approach, right? Leadership buy-in, clear communication, a supportive environment, and a focus on building those consistent habits.
Exactly. All of these elements working together can significantly increase the chances of successful implementation and long-term adoption.
You know, as we're talking about all this, I'm realizing that overcoming regression isn't about achieving some perfect state of being. It's more about developing resilience, that ability to bounce back and keep moving forward even when things get tough.
That's such a great point. And one of the sources actually touched on this idea of embracing imperfection. It's not about being flawless. It's about consistently putting in the effort, showing up and doing the work even when you don't feel like it.
Absolutely. It's about acknowledging that setbacks are normal and it's okay to stumble as long as you get back up and keep going,
You got it.
and to be kind to yourself along the way.
Right, self-compassion is key.
It makes the whole process so much more sustainable. Speaking of staying motivated, the sources really emphasize the importance of connecting with the why behind our goals.
It's all about tapping into that deeper sense of purpose. When we have a strong why, it helps us push through the challenges and stay committed.
And it's also important to celebrate those small wins along the way, right? It's so easy to get caught up in the pursuit of the end goal that we forget to acknowledge our progress.
Celebrating those small victories can be incredibly motivating. It reinforces positive habit and reminds us that we are capable of achieving what we set out to do.
And, you know, it just makes the whole journey more enjoyable. Because at the end of the day, life is about more than just checking off goals, right? It's about savoring the process, learning and growing, and becoming the best versions of ourselves.
I couldn't have said it better myself. All of these principles, heightened awareness, environmental design, habit formation, self-compassion, connecting with our why, they create this powerful framework for not only overcoming regression, but for achieving lasting positive change in every area of our lives.
I totally agree. It's a shift in mindset from striving for perfection to embracing the journey with all its ups and downs.
It's about recognizing that we have the power to shape our own destinies, one small, consistent action at a time.
And now for a final thought-provoking question from our sources.
What one small, consistent action can you take today to reinforce a positive change you're working towards? Before the break, we were talking about regression in the workplace. And one of the sources had this really interesting example about sales pipeline management.
Uh-huh.
Think about it. Staying on top of all those leads, following up consistently, scheduling meetings, like all of that, it requires constant effort. And when regression hits,
And that's fall apart.
exactly. You miss follow-ups, you might even forget meetings.
Yeah, that could be disastrous in a sales role. But the good news is I think those 3 pillars we've been talking about can really help build a system that's much more robust, much more aggression-proof. You know what I mean?
Right. So take heightened awareness, for example.
Okay.
In a sales context, this could look like, setting regular reminders to review your pipeline, or maybe doing a quick daily check-in, just to make sure nothing's slipping through the cracks. Some people even find it helpful to have an accountability partner within their sales team.
Oh, interesting. I like that. Keeping each other on track.
Yeah.
And then environmental design could be like organizing your CRM in a way that makes it super easy to visualize your pipeline, right? And prioritize follow-ups, maybe even using visual cues in your workspace, like a whiteboard with your monthly sales targets, to keep those goals top of mind.
Exactly. It's all about setting yourself up for success, right? And then, of course, habit formation comes into play in terms of building those daily or weekly routines for managing your pipeline,
Makes sense.
like blocking out specific time each day for outreach and follow-up, or using a task management system. These are all great examples of how you can build those, what do we call them, those neural superhighways for effective sales habits.
It's like paving the way in your brain, right?
Yeah, exactly.
This actually makes me think of another example from the sources, the whole implementing a new process or system within a company thing, like switching to a different project management methodology or a new communication platform.
Oh yeah, I've seen that go wrong so many times.
Often there's this initial excitement, but as the weeks go by, people start kind of reverting back to the old ways of doing things.
It's that comfort zone effect. Our brains, they just crave those familiar paths, even if they're not the best ones.
So how can companies make sure these new systems actually stick? That people don't just slide right back into old habits?
Well, the sources really emphasize that leadership and communication are key here.
Uh-huh.
It's super important for leaders to consistently reinforce the why behind the change. Articulate the benefits and directly address any concerns that people might have.
Right, like get everyone on board.
Exactly. And just as importantly, I think they need to create an environment where people feel comfortable experimenting, you know, making mistakes and learning as they go.
I love that. It's about fostering that culture of continuous improvement, where setbacks are seen as opportunities for growth, not failures.
Exactly.
And this actually ties back into habit formation too, right?
Yes.
It's not enough to just introduce a new system. You have to actually support people in building those new habits that might involve like providing training, offering ongoing support, maybe even a buddy system to help people stay on track.
A lot of companies are doing that now. The buddy system, it seems to really help.
So it's really a multifaceted approach, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Leadership buy-in, clear communication, a supportive environment, and that focus on building those consistent habits.
Right. All of those elements working together can make a huge difference. I mean, it can significantly increase the chances of successful implementation and long-term adoption.
You know, as we're talking about all this, it makes me realize that overcoming regression, it isn't about achieving some perfect state of being. It's more about like developing resilience, that ability to bounce back and keep moving forward even when things get tough.
That is such a great point. One of the sources actually talked about this idea of embracing imperfection.
I love that.
It's not about being flawless. It's about consistently putting in the effort, showing up and doing the work even when you don't really feel like it.
Totally. It's about progress, not perfection, right?
100%.
The key is to just acknowledge those slip-ups, learn from them, and get right back on track.
Yep. And, be kind to yourself along the way.
Always.
That self-compassion, it makes the whole process so much more sustainable.
Speaking of staying motivated, the sources really emphasize the importance of connecting with the why behind our goals.
Oh yeah, tapping into that deeper sense of purpose. Because when we have a strong why, it gives us that extra push to get through the challenges, and it helps us stay committed even when we want to give up.
And it's also important to like celebrate those small wins along the way, right? It's so easy to get caught up in the pursuit of the end goal that we forget to acknowledge all the progress we're making.
Oh, absolutely. Celebrating those small victories, it can be incredibly motivating. It reinforces those positive habits, and it reminds us that we are capable of achieving what we set out to do.
And, it just makes the whole journey more enjoyable. Because at the end of the day, life is about more than just checking off goals, right?
Right.
It's about savoring the process, learning and growing, and becoming the best versions of ourselves.
Couldn't have said it better myself. All of these principles, heightened awareness, environmental design, habit formation, self-compassion, connecting with our why, they create this amazing framework for not only overcoming regression, but for achieving lasting positive change in every area of our lives.
It's like a recipe for success.
It really is.
It's a shift in mindset, from striving for that unattainable perfection to embracing the journey with all its hooks and downs.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we have the power to shape our own destinies, one small, consistent action at a time.
And now for a final, thought-provoking question from our sources.
What one small, consistent action can you take today to reinforce a positive change you're working towards?
That's a great question to leave everyone with.
It really is.
It's so easy to get caught up in thinking we need to make these huge, dramatic changes to our lives.
Right, like a complete overhaul.
Yeah, but really, it's those small things done consistently over time that make the biggest difference.
I completely agree. It doesn't have to be something massive. Maybe it's spending just 15 minutes on that project you've been putting off, or prepping a healthy meal for tomorrow. Even just taking a few deep breaths to recenter yourself and reconnect with your goals.
Those are all great examples. The sources actually compared it to building a muscle.
Ooh, I like that.
Like each rep, no matter how small, makes you a little bit stronger.
Perfect analogy. And it reminds us that this is a process, not a destination. There will be days you slip up, you miss a workout, you hit the snooze button.
Oh yeah, we've all been there.
But it's all part of the journey.
Exactly. It's about progress, not perfection. The key is to acknowledge those slip-ups, learn from them, and then, what was that rule?
Never miss twice.
Never miss twice, get right back on track.
And don't forget to be kind to yourself along the way.
Always. Self-compassion is so important. It makes the whole process so much more sustainable.
Absolutely.
So, to wrap up our deep dive on conquering regression, it all comes down to a few key things. Building that self-awareness, designing our environments to support our goals, creating those powerful habits, and most importantly, approaching it all with a healthy dose of self-compassion.
Couldn't have summarized it better myself. The power to make lasting change really does lie within each of us.
So, to our listeners, I want to say this. Believe in yourselves, trust the process, and never underestimate the power of those small, consistent actions. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep diving deep.
See you next time.